Well, thanks very much for joining me, Terry. I have Terry Newman, the Managing Director of Ecquality Timber, and AustCham Shanghai member for more than 5 years. Terry runs a timber practice in Huzhou in Zhejiang. So thanks so much for joining us. Terry, why don't you let us know a bit about your business in China?
Thanks, Jack. It's the first time I've been called a timber practice, but we import timber, we process it, and mostly export. Initially, when we came here, we were only exporting to Japan. Since then, because of where we are, we really have a base to export to the world, but mainly it's still Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, and now some domestic, and occasionally we sell elsewhere. So the business now is a little different from when we started 12 years ago.
So what brought you to China 12 years ago? That's quite a long time to be manufacturing in this part of the world.
Yeah. Initially, I didn't come here to set up a factory. I came here to find, at that time, we had a mining boom just beginning, and as always happens in Australia, the Australian dollar was going to start rising, and it was going to get harder to export our finished products. So I was not producing in Australia, I was selling finished timber products, which we would have made in Australian mills and exporting those to Japan. And I knew that it was just going to become prohibitive for Japanese companies. So I began looking around in probably about 2006, whether we could do stuff in Vietnam, Malaysia, China, and I went to all those places. I did a little bit of production in Malaysia through a company there. But in the end, I settled on China because the logistics were better.
Right.
The proximity to Japan was excellent.
Yep.
And also from Shanghai, you can put into a large number of minor ports, not just the major ports of Japan, but there's direct shipping into places like Toyama. And so there were a lot of advantages coming here. So the idea was to find a manufacturer or a number of manufacturers who could make our products. I would send over containers of timber. We would write pretty contracts,
Yep.
and I would then go home.
Right.
But anybody who's done business in China realizes that was naive. We lost a bit of money on a few containers, and I decided that I had to be here to really control and supervise. And having done that for a while, again, I sort of started to do the costings, and then the difficulties of dealing with Chinese factories at the time. I thought, no, if I have my own workers, I can do this better than trying to control somebody else's workers. At the time, in that industry, you would go to a factory, you would drink tea with the boss. You might get to see a factory, but you might not even get to see much of the factory. You'd make your agreements and that sort of thing. But when it came to production, there wasn't a lot of formal communication from the office down to the factory floor. And so I found I had to be on the factory floor to really make sure that people understood what I wanted done. Otherwise, things would go wrong. And I found that process very, very frustrating. So after doing the costings and talking to local government, realising that we actually could set up here, we decided, I talked to my wife and said, look, we need to do this. And that was 2007, towards the end of 2007. And then in 2008, we actually made an investment. On the 18th of July, 2008, we recorded our company, registered our company, and in August, Lehman Brothers got into trouble. September, they filed for bankruptcy.
Yes.
By this time, we'd already made our commitment.
Right. Tough time to start a new business.
So a very, very tough time to start a new business. Very, very tough time to start a new business.
Can I ask you, Terry? I mean, I've been down to your factory in Huzhou in Zhejiang, and I remember when I was down there, you mentioned that you assessed a number of sites in this part of the world. Why did you settle on Huzhou?
Right. Okay. So in China, there are a number of clusters
Yep.
where they do timber. One is in Dalian, another is around Nanshan in Huzhou, and then there's Guangdong.
Yep.
And after looking at everything, I decided that the Shanghai logistics were probably better out of Shanghai for me into Japan, and also Shanghai is a much more international city. I didn't want to end up somewhere where I was really on my own, and I felt that being close to Shanghai had a lot of advantages. Guangdong is okay, but for timber, it's a natural product. So if you're storing timber in a warehouse in a very humid place, you've got moisture issues and moisture control issues. So that to me didn't seem like a good idea.
So Terry, in 2008, you set up your business, you found your site, you opened the doors. What was the hardest thing at that time? The global financial crisis was swirling around.
Yeah, so setting up the company wasn't that difficult. We found a good site and we set up there, but we were already then into the global financial crisis, which was turning out to be a very slow train wreck.
Right.
As you remember, at the time it was just a bank in the United States going bankrupt, and that was followed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all those things, and it became apparent that this was going to be a major issue. My Japanese clients by January had stopped buying, and they were saying, hold off, we just don't need anything right now, we're not sure what's going to be happening. And of course, that created cash flow issues for us, but we were looking at our cash going down, our costs going up, and not very much production. And I said to my wife at the time, this is like being on the runway. You've got an option at this point. You say, no, we're going to abort takeoff. And, as a company, that means you see what you can salvage at the end.
Right.
Or just put your foot down and hope that by the time you got to the end of the runway, you've got enough speed to become airborne. and I said to my wife, we didn't really have a lot of choice, because we weren't going to be salvaging very much. After you bought machinery and installed it in a factory, that machinery already is worth very much less than what you paid for it. So we decided to keep going, and I think there was a salutary lesson in that process, and which is useful today. We never got overconfident. A lot of Chinese companies were saying to me, you've got to grow fast in China, grow fast, borrow money, and there's huge opportunity. Get in there and start doing it, and your margins are too high. You've got to cut those margins back and pump that volume. And we didn't do that. We stayed on our own, I guess, very, very conservative path, and decided to be careful with expenditure. And really, for 5 years, we were out there, my wife and I. We didn't even travel. We didn't go back to Australia. We went back to Australia in that entire 5 years. We left China about 2 or 3 times to go to Japan or Australia, because we felt that there were 2 problems. One, going overseas would be again spending money that we really may need, and secondly, I was afraid to be away from the factory, because at that point, one mistake could be the end of this. If we had a couple of containers that turned out to be a disaster, maybe they got to Australia or got to Japan, in that case, got to Japan and it was found to be a problem, that could sink us. So it was a time to be extremely cautious. I guess that's the lesson we learned, which again, we've really continued by the same playbook all the way to today. We just said we're going to bootstrap, we're not going to borrow money. We're going to try and always keep cash in the bank, and never just eat our capital. And so when this happened, always Chinese New Year, moving on to COVID, we're seeing into COVID here.
They say some of the best businesses are born in recessions and downturns. So 12 years later, here you are.
We're not exactly Microsoft or any of these things.
Not yet.
No.
But has it prepared you to deal with what we're seeing in 2020?
Yeah, I think it has, exactly. And so when we started in 2020, we delayed by 2 weeks.
Yep.
So it wasn't disastrous for us. We had orders, we had wood, and most of our workers came back. And I think last time we talked, I was probably more concerned than I needed to be.
Okay.
Looking back now, I think no, we didn't have a lot of trouble. We had a 2-week delay in our start, but given the circumstances, that was really not a big problem. And so now, the issue for us now is not the tough beginning to 2020. It's how 2020 is going to turn out in the second half of the year.
Yeah.
Because now it's of course it's an economic problem, and it's an economic problem around the world. And even though Australia has the virus under control, China does. That's not necessarily going to mean demand is going to be restored.
So what is your outlook? So you're back to work, the factory's open, you've got some orders, you've got your global supply chain, and things coming through.
So the logistics have been fine. There have been no major issues, and we've had orders. Some of those orders, because in our business the lead times are very long.
Yep.
So projects that were started last year, they're going to have their floors anyway. So those ones we've been doing, but because of lockdown in Australia, we can expect that there are some delays, which will those delays will find their way to us really in June, July, August.
Okay.
And so fortunately, the construction industry is a priority industry. It wasn't under lockdown in Australia, in most states.
Yep.
It depends, I think it was a state-based thing. But our customers were still able to operate to some extent. And but showrooms were closed down. So consumers were not coming into the showrooms to order. So there's definitely delay. So in terms of outlook, it's unclear, but we just hope that construction is one of those areas that's going to be, the government is going to be concentrating on to try and get, it's an important sector of the economy, so it's going to get a fairly good priority. And we have to be flexible in what we do. We're doing more in the local market now than we intended.
Okay.
Because the local market for us is a little more difficult in that you need a fairly intensive interaction for very small sales.
Yep.
And that's for our kind of operation, which is a factory, business to business. We're dealing with small shops. They're selling to the customer, but there's a lot of interaction with them. So my staff, as far as possible, taking care of that and protecting me as much as they can from that. I'll talk to people, but I don't want to talk about those details. It's just too much. But we're doing more of that than we intended to do this year. Clearly, we have to say, right, no, okay, you're going to buy something from me. I'm listening. We have to be flexible.
You'll take orders when
we'll
they're
take orders, even if they're small orders. And the domestic market, actually, the margins aren't that bad.
Right.
The margins are actually quite good.
So now your business is obviously an Australian-founded, Australian-invested company in the Yangtze River Delta, and you're saying you're a more in China for China business. That's a growing share of what you do.
Yes, but it's still very small.
Okay.
A small base. But this year, I think that we made a decision that we have to push this more.
Yep.
We've been trying to do it for 2 or 3 years, and my feeling at the end of last year was that, look, I'll spend more time visiting Australia, visiting Japan, visiting clients, face-to-face contact with our B2B clients, and let's build our business that way. It's definitely quicker and more volume, and it's a question of where I spend my effort. But because those doors have now been somewhat closed,
sure,
certainly in terms of visiting Australia, visiting Japan, then we're backpedaling a little on that and saying, no, maybe China was good. We're going to try harder, and that's what we're doing now. Yeah.
You're on the front line as a manufacturer in the Yangtze River Delta. So the Yangtze River Delta is a powerhouse as a growth area for China, huge portion of GDP. We often say that Zhejiang, Shanghai, and Jiangsu together would be Australia's largest trading partner. 12 years of manufacturing, we always hear about China used to be the manufacturing hub of the world, less and less so. Do you see policies that are sort of filtering down to your level, encouraging firms to go west? Do you see differences of competition from domestic providers?
So you're talking about Chinese government policy about how we are placed.
Well, you're manufacturing in China, so the question more is, they're cleaning the skies, they're encouraging less pollution in this part of the world.
I see. So two things. I mean, I think one is those areas of certainly pollution, fire protection, worker safety.
Yep.
Those areas have been, in the last 2 years, the government's put a lot of effort into that, and that for us has created a lot of extra costs. So that has been difficult, but at the same time it's been necessary. I mean, we all recognise what has to be done. So, and we were clearly, because of the factory that we're in, you've seen, I mean, it's much, we weren't far below any standards. It's a matter of ticking boxes and things, so which took a fair bit of time. You get people in who have to do these surveys, and you just spend a lot of money doing all that sort of stuff. And so yeah, there was that. The other thing is the Chinese government is encouraging us also to go out to other markets. And they're saying, we're a local Chinese company as far as they're concerned, even though we're a WOFI. We're entitled to certain subsidies for trade shows. And they're saying, you need to go to South Africa, you need to go here, you need to go there, you need to go to Cairo or somewhere, and we'll pay some of those costs. Now, we haven't availed ourselves of all those opportunities because we don't think that they're markets for us.
Sure.
We are a very small company, and we're better off to concentrate on those our key markets, and there's more depth there that we haven't developed, rather than try and spread ourselves across a whole bunch of other markets where we have language and cultural and those sorts of issues just to get a few sales. It's not worth it. No.
Right.
The government's certainly encouraging that sort of thing, expanding that, helping Chinese companies to get more market share.
Right. So 12 years in China, Terry. What does the next 12 look like for you? Where are you taking the business?
Okay, well, let's leave my age aside. Certainly, any plans for retirement have been postponed because of this crisis. Now is not the time to be thinking about transitioning this business in any way, I don't think. So, we're here for the interim. They've just given me 3 years, as I mentioned to you before this interview, on my visa, which was a pleasant surprise, and my wife. So now I think, as I say, we're going to continue to try and develop the domestic market more. I recognise, as was said in the meetings today, about the importance of social media and that sort of thing, but our kind of product doesn't lend itself to online platforms. People don't go onto an online platform and order 100 square meters of flooring and say, send that, by the next Brady, no, that isn't how it works. But at the same time, it's important for your brand recognition. So I think looking professional and having a good design company involved in helping us to look professional. That's certainly when you've got a customer who is another business comes in and sees a nice showroom, good branding and presentation. I think this is all important. So we want to keep working on that, on some aspects of the social media side of things, to try and build the brand. And working out this model in China, how are we going to get more leverage sales in China, I think, and find the right partners here. I think that's very important. And this is what we're trying to build at the moment, is say, okay, maybe we don't want to be directly involved in retail in China.
Yep.
With the right partner who can take care of that side of it for us, then we can produce a bit more volume and let them take care of the marketing.
So we're in our new building, Australia House by AustCham Shanghai. I know you're planning a little bit of a pop-up promotion. Where can people find out more about you, and what are some of your key products that you're currently selling in the market?
Okay. So we call it Ecquality Timber, that's ECQ, and that's Eco Quality sort of pushed together. And so you can find us just on Google. You'll find us on LinkedIn, you'll find us on Facebook, you'll find us everywhere. And our key products really are higher value-added parquetry products, so solid French parquetry in numerous designs, and also wide French oak, wide and long French oak boards. These are the higher value products, and we've found that certainly our niche is in these areas where we don't just produce commodity. People come to us with a very specific project, which may be a house or an office or a development, and they want a particular kind of floor. So we do quite a bit of that sort of work rather than produce very standard products with low margins. It's just not our area. So yeah, solid wood, higher end parquetry, mostly European oak.
Right. And what are you planning here at the building?
And so downstairs, we're going to have a pop-up in your window, and for that, we're going to try and target some of the foreign, we think, some of the foreign designers here who are looking for some recycled product.
Great.
And maybe some end grain, which is orientate the grain upwards. You're looking at the end grain of the timber rather than the normal floorboard sort of thing.
Okay.
Quite sort of specialised products that architects might find interesting. Maybe a little bit of cladding for the buildings. So look, come and have a look. You'll be here.
I will see it. Well, Terry, thanks so much for taking the time. Good luck with the next 12 years in China. And thank you also for being the chair of our Manufacturing, Sourcing and Supply Chain Committee. And we look forward to more events and good content coming up.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.